From the Oregon State University Extension Service, this is Pollination, a podcast that tells the stories of researchers, land managers, and concerned citizens making bold strides to improve the health of pollinators. I'm your host, Dr. Adoni Melathopoulos, Assistant Professor in Pollinator Health in the Department of Horticulture. It's hard to stay on top of developments that are taking place with pollinators at the best of time, but 2020 was clearly a year that it was hard to pay attention to very much. We all had an immense amount of pressure in our personal lives and issues that are taking place on a national and global scale that we may have missed some of these really amazing things that happened actually in 2020. There's one person, though, who did pay attention to every minute thing that was taking place with bee pollinators across the globe, and that's Tait. Ian is with the Feed the Bees initiative, which is designed to encourage individuals, businesses, and organizations and government support a healthy and sustainable bee population. It's based out of Delta, British Columbia. And you may have noticed Feed the Bees on your Twitter account or on Instagram every day for the past 365 days. Ian has been posting the most remarkable initiative or science project that came on that day. So in this episode, you're going to get the full scope of what happened, what you missed in 2020 today on Pollination with Ian Tait. I've been sort of following. So I think I could remember earlier in the year to say, Feed the Bees. This is another post. And it's like, it's got a day on it. And then I sort of noticed it keeps going and going and going. So,
and on day 183, I said it was at my halfway post, right? God, it seems like ages ago.
Well, I guess so. This is it. So, beginning on January 1st, 2020, Feed the Bees, you've been posting a story a day on how plants, how to plant more pollinator plants and its importance. And I am really impressed with the amount of ground that you've been able to cover. Just to begin with, what possessed you to take on such a massive undertaking of a post a day on social media channels?
It was a momentary lapse of memory. No, not really. It was me thinking on the eyes of a reader, saying, what could be the most engaging thing we do, and how do we sustain it, and what interesting topics are out there that might be of interest to readers. And I just was sitting at my computer on January the 1st, and I said, well, I'll decide to do a post a day. 366 of them in 2020.
So tell us about the process, because these are great posts. These are not just regurgitated, simple things about pollinators. Some of these are in depth. How did you find these stories?
Well, the amazing thing is the interweb is an absolutely wonderful tool, and if you know how to look at it, and you know how to use it, and you know how to search, you can get very, very specific. I've also used alerts to stuff my inbox with all sorts of information on a daily basis. So I'm going out and I'm looking for news. I'm not looking for schlock, let's say, and it's worked out exceptionally well. Just for example, I search bee-friendly gardens. I search beekeeping bylaws, not bee-keeping bee laws. Bees, Feed the Bees, pollinator-friendly plants, pollinator gardens, and pollinators. And I get at least between 3 and 6 stories a day. So it allows me to search them so that I'm not North American specific, and allows me to find wonderful stories like postage stamps in Åland, which is an island off the coast of Finland, where they speak Finnish, yet the government is Swedish, or the other way around. I can't quite remember.
Really?
But it really is quite something. And I just look up stuff that's interesting and saying, here it is. It's compelling. Here's a link to it if you want to learn more, and just leave it at that.
I could just see you in the morning with your cup of coffee with your sort of 6 is Is it the finished postage stamp, or is it the new study on, different clovers? Or
yeah,
that's a great image.
Or is it pollinator license plates in the state of New Mexico? It's a whole bunch of different things, and all underlying it all is, what Feed the Bees is all about.
Well, we'll circle back around to Feed the Bees at the end of the episode, but right now you're in the perfect vantage point to sort of tell us what happened in 2020. Apart from pandemics and forest fires and all the things that happened, there's a lot going on in the pollinator world this year. And maybe to begin with, maybe highlight for us some of the initiatives that you noticed this year, initiatives that were got off the ground, that were really remarkable, and maybe some of us missed in sort of the craziness of the year.
Well, the first one that I saw was day 44. And your listeners should know that the naming convention for every link to the original article is bit.ly/capital F, capital T, capital B for Feed the Bees.
Okay.
Capital D, lowercase ay, and then the number of the day. So if you want to have potluck and go to, bit.ly FTB day 247, you'll never know what you're going to get. It's always a surprise. But
I'm doing it the old-fashioned way. I'm just scrolling back through your Twitter feed. So.
Oh my goodness, yeah, you can go blind. I'm not kidding.
Okay.
So
day 44.
Yeah, so day 44 was managing grassland and road verges. So road verges are verges and roundabouts. It's all of that wasted space you'll find in a cloverleaf, both on the approaches going to the right, to the left, over the highway and around the other way. All of that grass in there is it can be an oasis for nature. And the three organizations got together. One was the Wildlife Trusts in the UK, wildlifetrusts.org. The other one was Plant Life, and the other one was the Butterfly Conservation Trust. And they set up a guide that was absolutely wonderful. And it's something you can download. And a lot of councils, which is local governments in the UK, are adopting it and implementing it. So it's really quite something to see that. And when you think about across the UK, there's 300,000 miles of road verge. And if you manage it for wildlife while keeping safety in mind, could provide a huge network of corridors and refuges for nature. So that's straight off the website. Another one that I saw replicate that was down in a section of highway in Georgia, where they had very successfully planted it. And if you think about that, you wait to the, in the spring, they hack it all down, and, that's just done away with all the early sources. And then the companies that are maintaining it come out in mid-August and get rid of it. Well, there's an awful lot of other things that require that. So as long as you don't have to mow for safety reasons and visibility reasons, then why not just let it go fallow? So that was a really interesting book, and it's a booklet that your listeners can download as well, and it's at wildlifetrusts.org, and it's managing grassland and road verges, a best practice guide. And I love best practices, so anyway, it's really quite something. And this was all a result of a symposium that they had called Managing Roadside Verges for Biodiversity in Times of Austerity. So it was really something. So that's number one.
And I'm actually just looking at it right now. It's really well put together. It's got some British plants, but it does kind of like lay the problems out. Fantastic. Okay, great. Number two.
Number two, rather than a study, was a resource, and it can be found at pollinator.org, and it's selecting plants for pollinators. And there's a whole website there. This is for Canadian and USA listeners alike. They're called Eco-Regional Planting Guides, selecting plants for pollinators, and they're tailored to specific areas in the United States and Canada. And it is so simple. All you have to do is enter your United States zip code in one field and hit search. Or if you're in Canada, it's the first three digits of your Canadian postal code and hit search. And each one, you will get a opportunity to download 24 pages of native planting information in PDF format. And in the United States, it goes from regions, right? So it's Adirondack to Southern Rocky Mountain Steppe and everything in between. And in Canada, it's from Algonquin Lake Nipissing to Western Vancouver Island. So it really is quite unique. And remember what I said, native plants love native bees. So if you can find your eco-regional planting guide and select the right kind of plants for pollinators in your area, you'll be halfway, almost 3/4 of the way to helping them even more next season. And of course, now is the time to plant. You know what type of garden you've got. You know what you're going to be planting in the spring. And again, looking at those native plants will really, really help. And here's a 24-page guide that you can download and use yourself.
It's a really underused resource, I have to say. Like, they've put a lot of work into it, especially in British Columbia. Like, I think there's like 3 guides that cover the province or more. I mean, they've really put a lot of thought into what constitutes these regions. And I'm always amazed when people don't know about it. So I'm really glad that you brought people's attention to it.
Sure. I mean, in Canada, there's a separate regional planting guide for Haida Gwaii.
Yeah, I saw that.
Haida Gwaii meaning lands of the people. So it's a unique ecosystem up there. And of course, it's off the coast in the middle of the ocean, water all around it. Numerous islands in the archipelago, both north and south. And here they have recommendations for that community and that locale as well. So it's really, really quite something. Prince Edward Island is in the same thing. It's all by itself. But, in Vancouver Island, you've got Eastern Vancouver Island and Western Vancouver Island. So you've got Eastern Vancouver Island, which is in the on the land side of the equation. And of course, the western side is exposed to the Pacific Ocean. So of course, there's going to be different types on both sides.
But one does have to take a dig at PEI. I mean, for heaven's sakes.
PEI? Yeah, exactly.
They always have to have their own. So I love PEI, and I spent a long time there, but they also doesn't they have their own senator and stuff too? Anyways.
Yeah, and for 160,000 people, I think they've got 4 members of parliament. So
we love you, PEI. We love you. Okay.
Yeah, potatoes and all. We love you for sure.
All right.
Anyway, so that was on day 39. So the last one, I go back over the water and I look at what's called the All Ireland Pollinator Plan. And that is at pollinators.ie and looking for the tab that says All Ireland Pollinator Plan right up at the top. And wouldn't you know, the typeface is in green. Anyway, so it's this is an amalgamation of so many different partners that it's really, really quite something. And it was developed. The first plan covers the period 2015 to 2020, and a new version will be developed to cover 2021 to 2025. And it was launched by the National Biodiversity Data Center. So they have ideas for farmland, for councils, which is like a local and regional government, communities, which is civic government, businesses, gardens, schools, faith communities, transport corridors, that's verges and roundabouts again, site-specific guidelines, helping endangered pollinators, and newsletters and all sorts of free resources. And you notice I use the F word again, it's free, right? Everything that I've found that I've quoted is free, and the amount of resources that people are willing to share is just absolutely unbelievable.
Well, it's great to also see a national level plan. I think there's, you've covered a number of states and provinces that have initiatives or counties but it's really great to see a national level plan that's so coordinated.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you think of the Oregon Bee Project, for example, done in partnership with Xerxes Society in Portland, Oregon. It's an amazing thing using citizen science and people spotting what they see and reporting it back in. And again, having those lists of resources available to you as well. So, and of course, a lot of these organizations that I've mentioned are active on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So it's just a question of searching them out.
Well,
and
yeah.
All Ireland Pollinator Plan, again, was on day 18.
Okay, great. Thanks for the day. And I've figured out the naming convention. There was a lot of letters that you read out there, but it's real simple, and we will have it in the show notes so that people can quickly scan through and follow along.
Excellent.
So I guess we started talking about initiatives. Why don't you walk us through some of the science that happened this year, some of the cool, interesting science that maybe we missed because of all that's going on?
A recent one was day 351. And this might be something that appears, let's say, how can I say, it's one of those really, people are looking at that. And this was day 351. And it was rearranging nest boxes keeps more blue orchard bees around. So it was a study that was done, and it appeared in the Entomological Society of America's Journal of Insect Science. And it was a recent research experiment which showed that blue orchard bees could be a sustainable option in tart cherry orchards. And a simple change to the distribution of bees' nesting boxes make the bees more likely to remain in the orchard to nest, which is a crucial requirement for their viability as a cost-effective managed pollinator. Now, usually people just get a mason bee house or a little bee box or what have you, and, admire the little wee plugs that they're doing, and the green ones are leafcutter bees. But this is something that says if you plant it in a certain way, not only will they pollinate the immediate area, but they'll also stay in the area because there'll be sufficient crevices and canes for them to nest in. And again, the uniform distribution of nest boxes resulted in higher nesting and larva production than zones with a large central nest. And you've got to remember that mason bee, where a honeybee has a huge range in terms of where it will go for a nectar source, and then tell all her sisters, and they'll make a beeline, towards that nectar source. Mason bees have a much smaller area that they go out and prospect in, let's say. So you concentrate them, and they're not going to travel the great distances. But again, in tart cherry, which probably coincides blossoming with their mating and creating all of those little tubes full of larvae, they're going to be staying in the general area. So it was quite something. The image that came with it looked like a deck of cards being laid on top of it.
It really does, yeah.
And but you've got the 10 of drops, the 5 of drops. Well, there's another 10, there's a 2. So it must be something. And of course, again, you're talking about science. The product here was found on from the Entomological Society of America, so that was a little bit more too. So.
Yeah, and that comes from the great folks at the USDA Bee Lab in Logan, Utah. It's a great study, and they have a lot of tart cherry research with mason bees going on in Utah. It's a great study, and it's good to see. Like if you just disperse those nests around the orchard, you get better returns. So great tip for farmers that are trying to use these bees for pollination.
Yeah, and of course they'll be staying over, right? Because they'll be looking for crevices or what have you, returning to their bee nesting box. So I guess timing is everything. And if you've got enough food source around them, pollen and nectar from tart cherries, then bingo, that's all they need, and away they go.
Okay, what else
popped in? Do I have? Well,
what's up in your 366 card sleeve?
Well, this was back on day 272.
272, okay.
And it was a review. It was a review of. Enhancing road verges to aid pollinator conservation. So remember that book that I had talked about earlier on, or that article? Well, this was a review of science that was out there. And the highlights of it were road verges have considerable potential to be used for pollinator conservation. Verges can be hot spots for flowers and pollinators in managed landscapes. Traffic and road pollution can cause mortality and other impacts on pollinators. Evidence suggests that the benefits of road verges to pollinators outweigh the costs, cost of maintenance, cost of mowing, etc. And road verges can be enhanced for pollinators through strategic management. So that was in Science Direct, and it was really quite the study.
I'm just looking at one of the graphics associated with the study, and they break it down into like 6 questions of like how pollinators, question 3 is, well, maybe if you do you do pollinator enhancement, the insects are just going to get squished by passing cars, or maybe the pollution might affect the bees, or maybe, so it kind of like breaks it out into these possible outcomes. And I guess the research goes through and addresses all of this.
Yeah, exactly. And you have a setback where you're growing it, which is hopefully sufficiently away. But remember, if you're talking about native pollinators, here's the math lesson, Anthony. There's 22,000 plus species of native bees in the world. There's 7 species of managed bees in the world, and thousands of other pollinators. 70% of those native bees are found below ground. They're mining bees. They're digger bees. So if you think about it, again, and looking for a short flight path from all of those native pollinators to get to a source of pollen and nectar, that it could achieve quite sizable results. There's part of a bare piece of land up where I live here in North Delta, BC, which I go by in the summertime, and it's just I was going to say hive of activity, but that would be nasty. The surface of the dirt looks like it's living. There's so many small bees going in and out and darting here and there. And I took a lawn chair out there, and not a lawn chair, a small stool, and tried to take some close-up photos, but I really sucked at that, but didn't get many photos. But man, they're all around you. You don't necessarily have to look up or on top of a flower. All you got to do is look straight down, and they're there. So going back to enhancing road verges, they reviewed, identified, and synthesized 140 studies. Again, there's science behind it. There's a review of evidence-based management guidance for it. So it's really quite something. So that was day 272.
Wow, that's a great one.
Yeah. And the last one, which I thought was really, really good, was on day 255. And this was rangeland provides habitat for pollinators. And it was produced by the Xerxes Societies as well as the Natural Resources Conservation Service. And, the headline was Food, Shelter, Connectivity, and Absence of Insecticides are the 4 general components of pollinator habitat. The statistic, it said, although the amount of rangeland in the United States has decreased, vast amounts still remain. In fact, there's over 700 million acres. So one of the best things we can do for pollinators is manage rangelands in a manner that provides them with good habitat. So, there's an article about that. And then there's also a 6-page guide for producers, PDF file that can be downloaded as well. So, you think about it, it's not just city dwellers, it's not just orchardists, it's everybody. And there's a chance to do it on rangeland as well.
That's fantastic. And I do remember I can't remember her name. There was a researcher working in Virginia who was working on large swaths of unimproved pasture land that if it, minor conversions and trying to work out how you can add more forbs into the mix without increasing cost. There's some great findings to be made there, a good synergy between rangeland managers and conservation. That's great. Okay, that's fantastic. Great. Those are really great. I didn't know about I knew about the tart cherry study, but I didn't know about the other 2. I'm gonna bookmark those for later. You've also introduced people. You've used social media. You reached a really large audience, and you introduced them to some cool bees. Did any of the bees in your mind stick out that were also kind of new to you?
Well, I didn't know, for example, that Australia has a blue carpenter bee. And on day 296, we put up a picture of a blue carpenter bee and provided a little bit of information on what it is and what have you. And that was an absolutely amazing response. I think we got on our Instagram page, it was 228 reactions to it. So, and that's a good thing. So a blue carpenter bee, who'd have thunk it? Turning to Australia again, there's the blue banded bee, and that was on day 315. And let's see if my memory serves me. If it's got 4 bands on its abdomen, 4 blue bands on its abdomen, it's a female. If it's got 5 blue bands on its abdomen, it's a male.
Oh, isn't that the most adorable bee?
Yeah, exactly. And when they roost, they sink their big mandibles into a leaf stem, and they all huddle together. So, there's some really interesting pictures out there when you look at blue banded bees.
Awesome.
So it's just amazing. The other thing I started, and they're pollinators too. I started Moth Monday, #Moth Monday. Anyway, and came up with some just recently, day 354. My God, that was only a few days ago. Today is day 355. It was yesterday. Yesterday was Moth Monday. And we featured Dispania militaris. Oh, geez. I love Latin. Anyway, it's called the false tiger moth. And
oh, my God, it's gorgeous.
It's endemic to South and Southeast Asian countries such as China, India, Myanmar, Andaman Islands, Sumatra, and Java. First described by Carl Linnaeus in his 10th edition of Systema Naturae, published in 1758. So, it is just gorgeous. And for your listeners, it's a vibrant blue with a whole patchwork of yellow and a banded, what would you call that, abdomen? And it is just unbelievable. It really is quite something.
Yeah, the combination of that yellow and that blue, it's striking moth. Wow.
Oh, yeah. You begin to wonder where kite designs come from, in that part of the world.
I'll buy that kite if I ever saw it.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
Absolutely. I buy a whole string of them. But wait, there's more.
Keep going. Yeah.
A week ago, Moth Monday, December the 14th, day 347, in fact. Chryseridia ripheus, the Madagascan sunset moth, a day-flying moth and endemic to Madagascar. That's it.
Wow. This is a crazy-looking critter.
Yeah, it's considered to be one of the most impressive and appealing-looking lepidopterans. How's that? Was that all right? Lepidopterans. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, and again, I've just put a link to generic information on it. But, when you find an image like that, it just takes your breath away. And again, this is all about, engaging people and, providing them with some information and hopefully getting them excited about the world of pollinators. Some in their own backyard and some worldwide.
It's so important. I do think that just making it the wow factor of just like, these creatures exist. Yeah. My goodness.
Well, if you consider that bats and lemurs and hummingbirds are also considered pollinators, you look at it again, 22,000 species of native bees, 7 species of managed bees, and thousands of other species of pollinators. So it's just amazing. The hashtags that I always use are bees, bumblebees, butterflies, moths, native bees, solitary bees, mason bees, mining bees, stingless bees, sweat bees, managed bees, pollinators, native plants, pesticide-free, feed the bees 365. So, if people follow hashtags, which you can do on social media, you'll get a plethora of information coming up in your news feeds as well.
So I imagine a lot of this was new to you. So in sort of striking out in this project, you were in some ways looking for information yourself.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll tell you how we got there in the next part of the podcast.
Well, before we get to that, just tell me a little bit about the response. So you've a lot of different posts. You're covering a lot of different area. This is international in scope. Tell us a few stories about some of the responses you've gotten.
Well, I've been contacted by so many different organizations worldwide. You've got the Scottish Beekeepers Association. You've got Bug Life, which is a great organization in the UK with branches in Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland. The Australian Native Bee Association. So whether it's beekeepers or, the Butterfly Trust, Save Butterflies, I think is their handle on Instagram. I've had lots of opportunity to engage people to say, hey, can you please share this? And the other thing I've been doing too is signing up for webinars. So, I'll go online and I'll do a search, and, another keyword is webinars, and I'll see exactly what's coming up, and I'll register to attend. So, where do we go?
That's fantastic. Well, I'm glad to hear that the response has been amazing. I certainly, I kind of saw it pop up, and then, I've been following it as it comes along every day now. I'm gonna be sad when we hit December 31st.
Exactly. Well, I'll be able to take all the Band-Aids off the ends of my fingers and hopefully let them heal. So here's an example of the webinars I've attended recently. Building pollinator habitat in towns and cities. Build a garden for the birds and pollinators. Where are we here? The Wild World of Bees lecture series. So here's another one. Barriers, Bylaws, and Biophilic City Advancing. So it was quite different as well. And yesterday was Wild About Bees in support of Pollinate Toronto. So, it doesn't matter where it is. If it's a 7 o'clock webinar in the UK for you and I out here in the Pacific time zone, 7 o'clock minus 8, that's 11 o'clock in the morning. So, 11 o'clock to 8:30, and you have a chance to take part in it.
Well, so, I think that has been really a defining feature of, the pandemic year is webinars. There is so much content and so many activities that, you, especially if you didn't live in a large city, if you lived in let's come up with a British Columbia example. If you lived in Williams Lake, you didn't get a lot of stuff coming your way, but now suddenly you can go to Toronto, you can go to Oregon, you can go to California, and you can get some great education. Yeah.
And what I've done on our Facebook page, Anthony, is look out in Facebook land for events. So, I've got them listed, and of course I share them on our page as well. I don't take credit for it because it's somebody else's event, but I try to find the free one. So Monday, January 4th, planting for your 2021 garden. Friday, January 15th, invasive, native, or exotic. That's again the plant choices that you're making. And on Tuesday, January the 19th, butterfly and pollinator gardening 101. So there's been a whole bunch of past events. So I'm going to start searching after you and I have chatted and add more there as well. But, if you've got the ability to search Facebook, you do pollinator garden, you come up with the list, and you go down on the left-hand side and click on events. And the current events, the date is, or the coming events, the date is listed in red. So they really make it easy for you to find it and take part. And I do it all the time. My late father was a teacher, and his favorite mantra was, when you're finished learning, you're finished. In other words, you're not here anymore. So it's something that's resonated with me and something that I continue to do. And, I'm not a beekeeper. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a gardening expert. I'm just a guy who's interested in all this and happens to be a big cheerleader for what we're doing and what your listeners and others are doing to feed the bees and feed pollinators on an ongoing basis.
Well, fantastic. Well, let's take a break. We're going to come right back, and you'll tell us a little bit more about Feed the Bees and what it's about and where you're planning to take things. So,
absolutely, we'll be right back.
Okay, we are back, and I guess we were just talking at the break. This segment, how did it all start? So, Feed the Bees. What is this initiative, and where did it come from, and what was it hoping to accomplish when it was formed?
Well, it's an interesting question, and we certainly had an interesting genesis. I was on the board of the Delta Chamber of Commerce at the time, which is the Chamber of Commerce representing our community. Delta has 3 distinct communities, and we in landmass are 3 times the size of the city of Vancouver, but we're only hosting 110,000 people. That's because we've got a huge raised peat bog. I think one of the biggest in North America, Burns Bog, right in the middle of us, and a whole bunch of farmland within the agricultural land reserve, and all being actively produced, actively under production. So it's really quite a huge community.
And there's things like cranberries there, but there's also a lot of greenhouses.
Yeah, there's cranberries, there's blueberries, extensive blueberries.
Oh, blueberries, right, yeah.
There's potatoes, beans, there's all manner of stuff. So you've got conventional commercial agriculture, but also you've got small scale agriculture, a lot of certified organic farms as well. So that's Delta.
Okay.
So we were at the Delta Chamber of Commerce, and the Delta Farmers Institute came to the chamber and said, look, this was in 2008. He said, look, there's bees dying off. We're really worried about our pollination services that we get from our pollination services providers. And what can you do? So the chamber looked at it and reached out to a partner organization within the community called the Earthwise Society, which has a certified organic garden and farm with operations in Delta and out the end of the Fraser Valley in Agassiz, BC. And so I sat with Patricia Fleming, who is the executive director of the Earthwise Society, and we had a chat and say, well, what can we do? And the answer was, we're not going to talk about pesticides because we don't know what it is. We're not going to talk about beekeeping because we're not beekeepers. We know something about pollinator and pollinator planting and the right kind of plants. So why isn't this a call to action? And that's exactly what happened. So our mantra there is we need you to plant more, and we need more of you to plant. So there's pollen and nectar from March to October. The subtext of that is a call to action to individuals, organizations, governments, businesses, association to do the right thing and plant more bee and pollinator friendly plants. And it was just that simple, and it started from there. So that was the genesis, and we've just started building on it. We had a panel to help guide us through the initial period. Organizations like the Delta Farmland and Wildlife Trust, the provincial apiculturist Paul Van Westendorp lives in Delta, and he also helped out as well. And we finally just got the ball rolling, and we put up a website and started social media at various different times, and it's just grown from then. We're able to do complimentary events at Earthwise, such as bee-friendly plant sales and workshops, mason bees. There's a host of hives right the way throughout the garden, and a big harvesting time that I think yielded somewhere in the neighborhood of 600 different cocoons this year, or 600 cocoons rather, at the end of the period. So, we practice what we preach, and there's examples of it there. And there's people that come into the garden for their school-age kids. There's people who come in for therapeutic horticulture. There's people that come in because they're garden buddies with one of our volunteers. So it really is quite an oasis and quite a learning opportunity that we've got there as well. All tucked away in Tawasin, which is the beachfront community. You go through Tawasin to get to the BC Ferry Terminal over to Vancouver Island. So it's that's the way it all started. I look at the day one post, if I could turn back the hands of time.
All right.
Yep.
No, let's turn back to the hands of time. And if I remember there, it was, the goal is to get more, more people. It was that phrase you used, more people planting more plants.
Yeah. So day one, the very first post, I remember it well. January 1st, 2020. It seemed like 356 days ago. It started, we want to engage and inform and encourage more of you to plant more bee and pollinator friendly plants to feed the world's 22,000 plus species of native bees, 7 species of managed bees, and all other pollinators. That's it. We choose not to make, stock, or sell clothing, jewelry, bee-related products, seeds, wristbands, stationery, carry bags, or cards. Nothing. Nada. Rien. Bupkis. We will provide you with information, ideas, and resources starting today for each and every day of 2020. Stand by for more. So it's in keeping with what this organization has done and continues to do. And again, it just allowed us to focus on something quite interesting. And one of the things that we did was prepare a guide, which was bee-friendly plants for your garden and farm. It also has a bit.ly shortcut, and it's our what is it? It's our plant guide with the O and the P and the G in capitals. What we did was in the garden, go out from March through October, and we actually took an inventory of every plant that we saw that had a pollinator on it. And we classified them in terms of a sun plant, shade plant, herbs, and came up with an extensive list. We then also noted the flowering month that each one had in. So that's what the categories look like. We shared the whole list with Paul Van Westendorp and said, what do you think are the best? He whittled out a few. He added a couple of others. These are all native plants to British Columbia, our growing area. And we published it. We posted it. So there's an 8-page PDF that's downloadable, and it'll give you columns of its Latin name, its conventional name, the cultivar that we had. Not a cultivar, the species of it, or whatever the right word is, that we had, and a picture of it, so you know exactly what's what, exactly where to plant it, and it's most importantly, it has lots of stuff that shows in that dearth period between June, July, and August. So it's really, really been helpful. The other resource that we have in town is a company called West Coast Seeds, 3 separate words. And they have a certified organic seed stock. And a recent blend that they just came up with for pollinators was named after Dr. Bonnie Henry, who's our provincial chief medical officer and has sort of been the calm amidst the storm of the pandemic that we're all dealing with. And a wonderful, wonderful person, a very, very skilled doctor, and this was one of the things that was done as a tribute to her, with all proceeds being donated to providing food for disadvantaged individuals and communities. So it's and they have a catalog where they ship worldwide, and they also have an extensive mason bee section as well. So there's a lot of resources close at hand, so we decided to use them. So that was that.
All right. So now you've gone. It sounds like the organization's been stood up. You've got lots of great initiatives going on in Delta. What does 2021 look like for Feed the Bees? What have you got planned?
Taking a break. No, it's compelling. It won't be on an as frequent basis, but it'll certainly continue in the vein of what we've talked about Anthony, over the last wee while. It's, again, providing those information, those ideas, the resources, and still a call to action that'll allow people to understand what's going on, not only in their neighborhood, but, across North America and around the world. It's really quite interesting. You search for pollinators in Alaska, and you'll find out what challenges they face up there. You look at pollinators in Madagascar, and of course, it's quite unique flora and fauna that they have there, nowhere else in the world, and it's really, really quite something. So the amount of learning that can be done off it, and the amount of resources for children as well. If you put in quotes pollinators for children, and then hit a space and did .pdf. If there are any educators out there, anybody dealing with young students or any student, you look at the amount of resources that come back, and then by putting that .pdf there, you're confining it to something that gives you a publication. You don't necessarily have to look through everything. It's instantaneous, and it really is quite handy. And pick something. You could further modify it with grade 4, middle school, senior school, a grade 11 biology. It's just whatever you'd like to do. But again, the resources are there, and they're intended to be used. And hats off to the organization that have spent time and energy to put those whole things together and then make them available free of charge. And it's so close, just a mouse click away.
Fantastic. Well, let's take another quick break, and we'll come back. We've got our questions that we ask all our guests. I'm so curious, someone who's been really kind of taking such a broad scope, what your recommendations are. We'll be back in just a minute.
There you are.
Okay, we're back. So do you have a book recommendation for our guests? Or not our guests. I always do that. Our listeners.
Our listeners, yeah. You can't say viewers. That would ruin everything. But anyway, and I'm certainly glad the cameras are off on the Zoom call this morning. So yeah, my recommendation, I have to go through a local author, and one who I understand has been a guest on your show. She is a gift nonetheless.
She is a gift.
This was day 278, 10 tips for creating a bee-friendly garden. And it's a Vancouver-based educator and artist, Lori Weidenhamen. And her book is Victory Gardens for Bees, a DIY guide to saving the bees. And it's a fantastic resource. She's a big advocate. If you follow her on Instagram, I think she's at Bee Speaker. And let me just double check that.
No, she is Bee Speaker. That's her. Yeah.
Thank God, I got it right. But anyway, yeah. So it really, really is quite something. And again, 10 tips for creating a safe garden space that will provide bountiful benefits for bees and other pollinators. And that's on Feed the Bees Day 278. So I'd recommend that to your listeners as well. I'm
so glad. Lori is so talented, and she really is an amazing communicator. And also has just been at the center of a lot of initiatives in BC around native bees. It's really, I really recommend the book, and I'm so glad that you've recommended it. It is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on Facebook, she has another handle, and she shows pictures of baking, which of course, I think everybody in the world is interested in baking. And I remember at the beginning of this, what the Queen called it, an annus horribilis. This terrible year, it was, you couldn't buy any yeast and flour in the stores, let alone toilet paper. So anyway,
well, that brings me to number 2, go-to tool. Because when you don't have any yeast, like, what are you going to do? No, but what is your? You've talked about extensively using the internet as that it's not a lack of resources out there, but going and finding them. And I think your initiative this year is a really great example of actually it's all out there.
Yeah, and that was going to be my recommendation. My go-to tool is the interweb. And, whether it's, again, looking for those educational resources for teachers or parents or grandparents, it's all there. Use a .pdf and see what you get. checking out some of the organizations that we've talked about, the Bumblebee Conservation Trust, Xerxes Society, some of those other ones, Plant Life and wildlife trusts. They all have resources. They all have education. And it's, again, just a mouse click away. Following hashtags that are of interest to you, whether it's kitties of Instagram or something that I do, which is, bee-friendly gardens, it will come up with something on a daily basis. And, of course, if you search for those items in the web browser that begins with G and ends with E, you'll be able to create a news alert where those stories will be put right into your inbox, and you can read them at your leisure. Use your email system to put them in folders and not gum up your inbox, so you know exactly where the topic is and exactly where it is in your folder list. So it's really quite something. So the tools are out there. They're a mouse click away. What you waiting for?
Well, I love how courageous you are with it, because I think for some people, it's just like, oh yeah, I'm going to put grade 9, like you were saying before the break there. It's like I'm educational material, and I'm looking for something grade 9, and I'm going to just put as much in that search box as to get as specific as possible. And it's only then that you really turn up the gems.
Exactly. And again, if you use quotes to delineate exactly the phrase you're looking for, that helps it narrow it even more. And I mean, when you put a search in there and you say, oh, I got 11 billion results in 3.2 microseconds, I go, holy Moses, I remember the days of going to the library and, going through a card catalog. So it's changed quite a bit, and it really is there. So, you think of parents, kids on the holiday season break. Put them to work. Start planning your pollinator garden for 2021. Look at a piece of lawn and maybe peel it back in the spring and put a beautiful pollinator plants right in the middle of your garden. Why not?
Fantastic. Well, everybody get out there and use those resources. And I guess the last question we have, and I'm very curious what your answer is going to be, is you've covered such ground this year. Did any pollinator species sort of warm your heart the most? It's like you really love that pollinator.
Well, I had to look at the extremes, and I had to look at the smallest and the largest. So the world's smallest bee is Perdita minima, and it is found in the southwestern United States, and it's especially petite, is the way they call it. Perdita minima are slightly less than 2 millimeters long. So if you put it on a dime, you'd have to look hard for it to find it. It's that small.
Yeah.
So and they have a nest in sandy desert soils. And they look for anybody who's looking out to seek the pollinator looks for its passing shadow across the ground rather than the bee itself. So small it can pass through and escape from netting fabric mesh of ordinary insect nets. If you can imagine that, a big butterfly net just going down there and scooping it. Well, Perdita minima just muscles up to that mesh and pops right through it.
All right, that's a great, and we've got that whole genus. There's all sorts of some great bees, even in British Columbia, I believe you've got a number of species. So this is a great, the fairy bee. It's just a nice, delicate little bee. Yeah, exactly. And of course, you go from one end, the world's smallest, to the world's largest. And we had a article. On one of our daily reports. The Megachile Pluto. Megachile Pluto, yeah. Named after a large bowl of chili and an animated Disney character. Sorry, Megachile. I was going to say Mega Chili, and I'm sure I would have been corrected. Anyway, the world's largest bee is Wallace's giant bee, and it's probably also the world's most elusive. It was first discovered in 1859, and they couldn't find it again, and it was presumed to be extinct. But it's recently been filmed alive in the wild. It grows 1.5 inches long with a wingspan of 2.5 inches,
and have large mandibles that almost look like those of a stag beetle. So, I mean, those are really scary things. And if anybody's a subscriber to National Geographic magazine, the story appears in the October 2019 issue. So, there's something that's just the smallest wee thing in the world, and then there's the whopper. So it's really quite something. So, it's just amazing. And those are only 2 out of 22,000 plus species of native bees around this world.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Ian, for being generous with your time, and we are looking forward to keeping tabs on you over there at Feed the Bees and all the great work you're doing in Delta. And thanks for giving us this real rich experience through otherwise kind of horrible 2020.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for inviting me, and I'd like to wish you and your listeners and their families a very happy holiday season and all the best in 2021. So take care of yourselves and stay safe.
Thank you so much for listening. The show is produced by Quinn, Sin, and Neil, who's a student here at OSU in the New Media Communications program, and the show wouldn't even be possible without the support of the Oregon Legislature, the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research, and Western SARE. Show notes with links mentioned on each episode are available on the website, which is at pollinationpodcast.oregonstate.edu. I also love hearing from you, and there's several ways to connect with me. The first one is you can visit the website and leave an episode-specific comment. You can suggest a future guest or topic, or ask a question that could be featured in a future episode. But you can do the same things on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook by visiting the Oregon Bee Project. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next week.